All downhill since then. Pretty much. You need more coverage.
Okay.
What is it? Voice condition. That's just that. That's
Alrighty. Okay, so we should be recording now to start our project meeting for Uplands A7.
Perfect. We are recording. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to be sure. So we're not showing the video. We're just recording the sound. Is that correct?
Well, the meeting owl is showing everyone in this room right now
Okay, terrific.
and recording the sound. So this meeting is recorded and we will be posting it onto the city's YouTube page after.
Great. So
And-
would you like us to move over there, stay over there, or are you okay getting us all over here?
You know, I'm thinking maybe kind of just in this general area.
Up on
Yeah,
the stage?
'cause otherwise it kind of splits you all over the place. Okay,
Sorry, I know
It's
we're
okay.
recording, but I wanted to just be sure
yeah, of course.
we're doing this. So we're going to go back and
It's
forth.
good.
This is like a trio, so thank you very much. My name is Marcus Pockner. I'm going to be the host tonight for the Uplands Planning Area A7. This is a required neighborhood meeting, a meeting we are looking forward to having about this site. Just went and looked at the site again, walked it, actually parked on the side and kind of looked out. Obviously, the area A7, the southeast corner of the parcel A site. Next slide, please. This is our team, many of who are here, all of them who are here tonight. Bonnie, Kaylee, and Brad and I will give the presentation. Yes, that's pretty much right.
Yeah.
We'll all jump in here and then we'll be available to answer any questions for the group. And certainly, if there are questions from the online, we'll put up some contact information as well. Next slide. This is the slide, meet the team. This is our agenda. We'll give a quick Uplands update on the overall progress of the development and process. And then we'll also specifically talk about Area A7. Next slide. Uplands update. I'm going to come back here so I can see the slide, but this is something that we present all the time about the overall. If you go to the next one, this shows a little bit about kind of the process we go through with the neighborhood. Just a reminder, last week we hosted an Uplands quarterly meeting. We have 3 more scheduled this year, 1 each quarter. We have 1 in May 23rd. We think those are infrastructure meetings. Those are meetings to detail to the community, the construction, the timeline. Again, just driving down 84th, seeing the grading, overlap grading that's happening there. All of these, each meeting will have continual updates on the timeline and construction schedules. Next slide. Here's some overall updates. Again, parcel A is the larger parcel that's kind of surrounded by blue lines there. These are some of the public improvements that are happening right now. Blue are water lines being pulled into the site. You're also seeing some over-X, a lot of grading on site. That is all temporary grading that is happening there now. As we pull out the soil, go back through that process and go through that. We're going through and putting some utilities in. You're also seeing the red and green here, the red being sanitary sewer on Shaw, and green also storm drainage improvements on Shaw Boulevard. Always point out that little the intersection at Federal and 86, that's a newly proposed intersection right at Federal and 86, a full movement intersection right across from Crown Point Academy. Next slide. This has got a lot of information. It actually changes all the time based on where we're at in the community process, but it really shows kind of the ongoing. So it shows the infrastructure improvements, but then it starts to look at the Uplands community as a whole, and then neighborhood by neighborhood, how we're approaching this site. So each one of the neighborhoods you can see first starting with A2 and B1, those are the 2 fully approved neighborhoods. Their site plans are approved. The site plans are superimposed on this slide, and you can see the plan that we're starting to do, and you'll actually start to see activity on them in the coming months. The purple shows neighborhoods that are in the city review, the new process that are going through right now. And then also the yellow are sites that have actually recently been to Planning Commission and are headed to City Council. So that's A4 and C2, which is an affordable housing site over here on the eastern portion of C. We are here tonight to talk about A7. So just so everybody can orient themselves again, the larger A parcel, the southeast corner there, or the northwest corner of 84th and Federal. Next slide. This is a slide we will continually remind folks of the planned open space around this site, just at 40 acres, including the PLD and the view corridor. Noting here on A7, just kind of pointing that out, we have the Central Park to the north of that. Then these remarkable views as you turn to look back towards Denver, starting to look at the view corridor across 84th really, and the parkland down to Cobblestone Park. So really starting to look at this node of open space here. But again, this site on A7 really tying back into the Central Park and then the Northwest Corner Park here as well. Next slide. I think Kaylee gets to talk about A7 maybe and tell us a little bit more about the vicinity map.
Awesome. So as Marcus mentioned, A7 is on the screen here in orange. This is a roughly 18.62 acre site. We are bounded by 85th on our north side and 84th on our south. And then we've got Irving on the west and Federal Boulevard on the east. Next slide. We sent out a mailer to 1,322 residents roughly within the 1,000 foot buffer per the city requirement for a neighborhood meeting this evening. Next slide. And here, where are we in the process? So we've gone through the comp plan amendment, the annexation, the PDP, MODP, which all allow for this use within planning area A7. We brought this project forth to the city in June of last year for a pre-application meeting. And then we went in front of council for the concept review meeting in August of last year and officially submitted our first round of site-specific official development plan near the end of last year. We received our first round of comments and therefore we're here tonight to have this neighborhood meeting and hoping to submit our second round of ODP in March of this year. And then we will keep progressing per the city requirements and then hopefully be in front of planning commission and city council here later this year. Next slide.
Terrific. Just a little information. This is a slide we always show that looks through the compliance. So the PDP, the middle column there, PDP and master ODP, that's our guiding document. Do we comply with those? And that's what really sets the parameters for all of these items, the density, the parks, the setbacks and building forms. Then what we're actually providing, so what we're showing here in A7. So you can see it's 180 homes. We're certainly under the cap, the max number of units. We're at 9.67 dwelling units per acre. We are right at just about 4.1% on publicly accessed private parks. One thing I would note here is the kind of the setbacks that are on the perimeter. Again, talking about federal, really a very substantial federal really a perimeter setback, and we'll show that in landscaping form, perhaps talk about that a lot. And then some additional views really on the southern end of this site to have even more of a setback to actually capture the views looking back towards the city and add a buffer from the federal and 84th intersection. So again, really staying within their guidance of what's required there. We've also noted that we've added that lower column, just kind of tracking the affordable housing that's in place as we move through the process on the St. Charles Town Company application. So at least 300 units of affordable housing will be provided on Uplands. And we're showing right now approximately 300 plus that we're going through the process now. Next slide. I think Kaylee is going to tell us a little bit more about the perimeter and focus probably a little. I can help here on that federal setback as well.
Awesome. So along 85th Avenue here in yellow on the screen, we are required to have a 12-foot minimum setback. We are providing a 23-foot setback along that frontage. And then here on blue, which is on the right-hand side of your screen along Federal, there is a 50-foot minimum for the north half of Federal. And then a 65-foot minimum for that southern half. You can kind of see that jog there on the screen. And we are meeting that 65-foot setback on that. And then on the bottom of the screen in that kind of orange color along West 84th Avenue, there's a 15-foot minimum building setback. And we're providing a 29-foot. And then in pink along Irving, we have a 12-foot minimum and we are providing a 37-foot building perimeter setback. And we'll go in a little bit more detail what's happening in that Federal Boulevard setback here a little later. Next slide.
I think that's me. So you have been oriented, you kind of know where the site is. I'm not going to go through all that again, but key features to point out here in the center, we have a privately accessible publicly accessible private open space. We're really proud of that one. We're really proud of how that park laid out. We also have a really enhanced edge along Irving Street. with some of those cutouts and notches, where homes fronting on that Irving Street. Wanted to dig into the number of units. We have 180 units, and of that, there's 3 different product types. There are 3-story single-family detached homes. There's 30. There are 2-story detached homes, 82, and the townhomes, there are 68. Next slide. This next slide, I've seen this probably before, but the connectivity. Connectivity is one of our key tenants of Uplands. We want to make sure we're connecting to the neighborhood to internally and externally. You can see here, there's not many more ways to connect than what we show on this exhibit here. Next. And then focusing on that federal buffer, part of the MODP is looking at how that federal buffer would look. How do we use the city criteria and enhance it and make it something we're really all proud of? We've got screen walls and screening that as you're driving south on Federal will block views to the homes, but also keep views from the homes to the city of Denver from that. We can go to the next one. This is the park that I had mentioned. Some of the amenities in this, we're going to have some orchards. We've got a communal play turf area. We're really, in the community in general, we've really tried to minimize our turf except for these park areas and have that play areas for that. This park is called the Veranda, where you have a really great structure that spans that whole area. There's a trellis that hangs off that with some vines growing on that. Bocce, ping pong, playground are some of the amenities here as well. Next.
Great. Next, we're going to jump into architectural diversity. Next slide, please. A7, we're bringing forth a new product to Uplands. This is kind of more of a cottage style home. They're a little bit smaller in nature. Up on the screen here, we've got our 2-story. So we have 3 different versions. We've got a modern, a cottage, and another modern. Next slide, please. Then we have some 3-story product as well. Those are the Colorado Prairie and the Shingle. And then we have some townhomes as well. This also helps break up the housing diversity, providing another home type to this planning area. Next slide. And then next slide. And then that is the last of the townhomes provided. Next slide.
Great. I was just going to mention, as you look at the architectural, maybe if we can go back one more. Thank you. Just to note here, we always try to introduce the builder when there's a particular builder involved with the neighborhood. This does not have a builder attached to it yet, which is actually very common to go through a planning process, design the neighborhood, design the architectural styles, and look at kind of common footprints, things that we want to design, and different architectural series. So as Kaylee went through, these are actually new architectural series that we're bringing to the site, and it's not a particular builder. So we will go through that planning process, not having a builder attached, and then actually we'll work with different builders in the marketplace to bring that product in. So this is actually a reflection of a product that we've heard that people wanted to see more of this area. So we're changing that. And again, that's why we're not introducing a builder attached to the plan or anybody's name kind of going through that. So we will continue to do that. We just wanted to disclose that. That's why you're not seeing like a builder partner on this. And you'll actually see that on other neighborhoods again, which is probably more customary to go through that process and design the homes and then attach a builder to it later in the process. Next slide.
Are there any building heights attached to those?
Sure. Yeah, there was a question. Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back, John. So the question, so everybody can hear it, is, are there building heights and particular forms? We'll look, there are certainly building heights and caps, as you know, in the PDP, but we'll come back to those architectural forms and go through what those heights are for each one of those. Next slide here. On the exceptions, this is a slide that we show. We always try to disclose the exceptions to the community that we are going to request from Planning Commission and City Council. This is the justification slide where we look at what the PUD said to look at, reflect at maximum design freedom. Again, that's why I talked about the reason we're designing these homes today without a builder is to have that design freedom to bring in some new building products to this neighborhood, which is what we're trying to do here. So we'll show you a few of the exceptions. Next slide, please. We're gonna really focus, and Kaylee will help me on this, on the parking. This is a very common parking perimeter, how we handle the parking on the site. One thing I want to say about all of these exceptions, we work so hard to make them on-lot exceptions, so they're not perimeter exceptions. So we transition to all of you as neighbors in the same way that you're accustomed, but we're actually able to do a little bit more kind of planned and organized and modern planning inside the neighborhoods. We'll also talk a little bit about architectural diversity as well. Next slide. So Kaylee's gonna help me because she knows this slide really well. That just shows the garage parking, and we'll layer on the different parking stalls and how it applies to each unit type.
So as Marcus mentioned, items here in orange on the screen, if you can see those little boxes inside each of those homes, those are the garage spaces. So we are actually providing mostly two garage spaces per unit, but we are limiting one stall garages to 28 single-family detached homes. Next slide. Here in blue on the screen, you can kind of see on the right-hand side, that is our surface parking for guests. Next slide. Here in purple shows all of our internal on-street parallel parking spaces. Next slide. And then here in teal along 84th on the west-hand side, western portion of A7, you can see those on-street parking spaces. Those don't count towards our overall. They're just an additional parking spaces that we will be providing.
So again, just repeating that the 84th there, the teal color, that last layer, those are provided. They're not there today. You can see it's not in the last segment as you move east to Federal. So there's certainly traffic lanes to move through there. The other thing I'd point out is we just wanted to be sure and have some parking immediately adjacent to that pocket park, kind of internally, and in each ends of the neighborhoods where we would have guests over, where people would have guests over. So you're seeing this. So again, this is meeting the overall parking requirement, but in a different way than some of the traditional neighborhoods. And that's why we go through and ask for the exception. Next slide. This is just a chart. We'll probably actually in Planning Commission and City Council go into a little bit more detail, but this shows some of the details that happen to allow these different product types to be built. So for instance, the lot depth is a little different than was in the MODP. The reason for that is we're trying to be much more sustainable on yard size, to actually have more common areas, common yards, the parks instead of a backyard, right? To have more space that's really shared, that's accessible by all. You can see the rear setbacks is less than was advised, maybe than we put in. That allows, again, a lot of alley loaded product, different forms of homes that really comes in. So these are a couple of specific examples of changes that we've made in the architectural design and the community design to bring forth these home products. Next slide. I think that's pretty straightforward as far as the community. If we don't mind, Stephanie, if you don't mind, if we go back to maybe just an overall site plan, we'd love to take any questions or comments. Mr. Palmer already had a question about our heights for the different architectural series. So maybe I think Kaylee is looking at those exactly, but we'll look for that answer to kind of go through the different plans. But if anybody else has any other questions, I'm happy to go through it. Yes, John. Yeah.
Sorry, slide 30.
Sure. Slide 30. The parking slide, the overall that shows all the layers. Okay.
Where the double purples are,
Yes.
and I can't make out exactly what streets those are.
Sure.
What is the width of those streets? And if you park cars on both sides, what is the open area? And
Great.
will that accommodate the fire department trucks?
Yeah. So really good question. You can see the double load, if you will, the purple lines. I'm so sorry. Yes, sure. Question for the audience, so everybody can hear. Looking at the screen that may be in front of you, where you see two purple lines on opposite sides of the streets. How wide are those streets and what's that feel like? So for instance, the north-south street there is Grove Street. So Brad, you want to talk about maybe what the distance of those streets are and kind of separation between the parking?
Sure. We have to meet the guidelines of Westminster, so we have to meet their requirements. And so that is what we're doing. And that provides parking on both sides through drive lanes on both directions. I think it's an 11-foot lane, I guess, 11, 10,
On both, so there's 3 10-foot lanes or only 1 10-foot lane?
2.
So each travel lane would be 10 feet. So 2 travel lanes and then the parking on the sides of each travel lane.
And no bike lane?
A bike.
Not on those internal streets. Are there bike lanes is a question. Not on the internal streets, yes, on the perimeter, but not a designated lane or a striped lane for biking.
Do you want to answer that? One that runs through the middle where.
Sure. Yeah, so another question was there about that central street, which is actually West 84th place. If you're looking at your screen, it shows that we're again on the north and south side of that street. Brad, we're proposing parking. It's a little bit more staggered. That's really because of the garage entrances, or excuse me, the alley entrances. So it staggers a little bit of the street parking that's along West 84. Does have the same situation. Yes, Kaylee, yeah.
Going back to your question, John, on building height, so we're roughly around 23 feet is our shortest, and then our tallest is 34 feet, 3 inches.
And I don't see
Yep.
anything designated on this map as ADA for visitors.
Yep.
Or residents.
ADA for accessibility on the parking. So are there, and I'm so sorry, the question just was because I hear, are there ADA designated parking spots? Kaylee, are those just throughout the site or in the guest parking? Where do those come in now?
Are they dedicated?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so in the guest parking over there on the southeast corner, there's, I believe we have one, and we're designating two immediately adjacent or near the park in the central part of the site, on street.
And that's for guests or residents, because I know up here you've got purple and you've got blue, and you have designated those as two different categories.
There's no, we're not defining what a guest versus resident. The combined shared parking. So that based on the number of stalls we're providing the required number of accessible stalls throughout the site.
Yeah, and I would just clarify that. I think it's a really, you're correct in the way we said it. I'll note that as you're looking at the screen, the image, we show enclosed garages, right? That's how we describe it. And then we'll call the rest guest surface parking, right? So that's just generally outside of the garage, right? So guest parking. So we are correct that we don't designate those differently throughout the community. But again, of course, we're meeting all ADA requirements and really trying to disperse that through the community, but focus on the park and kind of the accessible areas as well. I'll repeat again, Kayla, I don't know if everybody could hear that. So if we go to the building slides, do you mind, just the architectural slides? We range in height from, was it 23 feet to what's the townhome or the 3-story product? Okay, so 34 feet, 3 inches is the tallest structure that we're proposing. Is that correct? Kind of in that general area. One other question we had from somebody was, is this site, we know there's so much slope on 84th as we move here to Bellevue Christian, where we're holding the meeting, as you move down to Lowell, but is this a level part of the site? What's 84th like on this area? Or is there quite a bit of grade along 84th?
As you head west,
Yes.
you said, there 84th starts to fall off. As you perceive the site from 84th, the further east you are, the homes will perceive to be essentially level with 84th, maybe a couple steps, a couple feet higher than 84th. And then as you move further west, the site itself is essentially level. But as you move further west, I believe we have the houses a couple feet below 84th.
Yes. Yeah. As we move.
It'll perceive level.
It'll perceive level, you're right, at grade at 84th, right? But then the houses is where we make up some of that grade.
It's
Yes,
like 8.
great, perfect. Yes, go ahead.
That'd be the only guy.
No worries, yeah.
If she could dial up a picture of, say, the intersection approximately at 84th and Irving.
Sure. Do you mind, so just the overall site plan that shows, or a picture of,
Like 30 might be a good bit. That one would work.
yes,
84th and Irving.
uh-huh,
Currently, there is one through lane in each direction on 84th. What are the plans at Irving? Will there be a dedicated center turn lane? Or will there be actually dedicated turns into this development as well as to the south into this school?
terrific.
Living in the area, I see what happens up there at 84th and Irving with people coming and going, especially to the school.
Yeah.
Now, if we're gonna add all of these houses, how does that work? Will there be a dedicated turn lane?
So I'll just make an observation for folks looking at the map. So moving west again on 84th, either turning right, which is north into Irving, or more likely south if you're talking about coming to the school. So turning south there in Irving. So if you can tell us if I'm moving west on 84th to turn left on Irving, is there to turn left southbound? Is there a dedicated turn lane there in the middle or just the regular travel?
The traffic study did not recommend the auxiliary lanes at that intersection.
Right, I'm gonna say contradictory to what I was told by the building department earlier this week.
That there,
Specifically. I was told there would be a dedicated turn that 84th would be widened and there would be a dedicated turn lane in there, so. I'm not sure who.
Yeah. We'll check that. I think one thing we can show in the, we'll show again the cross section of 84th. We'll bring that in for the planning commission. Just a reminder, I know you know this, John, but the master infrastructure, the perimeter infrastructure, right, is going through a separate process. I know you know that, and that includes the improvements on 84th. I think we probably know that, but we'll confirm that back to you. So you're suggesting, yeah, that you thought there was or were told perhaps that there was a dedicated turn lane at 84th and Irving. And is that the case, or is it just going to be the 2 through lanes?
Right.
Okay.
I was told there would be a dedicated turn lane.
Turn lane.
One for both directions, or if each.
Had it, okay,
Right.
great. We will get that
I'm
answered.
Suggesting that needs to be thought about severely.
Yep.
It's a problem.
Yeah, the way it backs up and yeah, and I'll just note for everybody, I mean, the thinking of the grid today, having just driven that a few minutes ago, just I guess just east of here, right? Is thinking about, of course, Irving does not extend north into the site now. We will be breaking up some traffic flow, but your question is really southbound, coming off of 84th or coming from interior Uplands into that site. So we'll get an answer back. I know Stephanie knows as well, so we'll come back with an answer for sure on that. That's great. You bet.
Any questions?
Questions, comments? Any other thoughts? Any feedback? Whatever you'd like, you can provide it. Yes.
No, for 84th getting into either the school here, either north to southbound on Irving.
So it doesn't stop traffic flow is the question.
Schools in or schools out, but because the people wanting to turn cross traffic onto 84th. And
Yeah.
right now, that doesn't include going into Irving or the amount of traffic that will be coming out of this development onto 84th.
Great. And I'll just have a follow-up. Is there any, there's obviously not a stop sign or anything proposed on 84th. There's no stops between Federal and Lowell. Is that correct?
There are no stops.
Yes. Okay, great. So there wouldn't be a stop sign there or anything like that to break that flow. That's just the traffic study did not design or yield that, correct? Okay, terrific. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead.
Two more.
No problem.
Are there bus stops? I know looking
Yeah.
at the CDOT, I know they're trying to make our RTDs plan the other night. Is there gonna be a bus stop attached to this development? If that makes sense.
Sure.
Currently, right now, the bus stop is on the other side of 84th, or south side of 84th. Will there be one accessible from this on the north side of 84th?
Perfect. So I think I'll defer to the team here. I know we're looking for a different slide to show that, but generally, are there additional bus stops, right? I'll make everybody aware, we're very focused, as John mentioned, the RTD plan of maybe bus rapid transit along Federal. That's generally, we believe, north of 86th. But let's just see, is there a planned stop? I think we're looking for a slide here on the south side of 85th or the south side of 86th. Yes, sir. There is on the south side of 84th. Kaylee, any feedback there or anybody on that? Yeah.
There will not be a new bus stop on southbound directly adjacent to PAA7. It will be the one you're referring to on the south of 84th, that will be improved with the federal plans.
And is that's improved on the south side of 84th? And that's improved by this development or just in the overall process?
It's kind of both. So,
Okay. Great.
so Upland is contributing and RTD working alongside CDOT as well.
Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah,
One other question.
sure.
mail? Will each one of these houses be having mail delivered, or is there going to be some kind of
Yeah.
central mail facility?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have not asked it. The mail kiosk, how does that work? Is that generally, Brad, Kaylee, where does that show up in the community of this size?
Has anybody talked to the post office about it? They're not.
Yes, we do.
Coordinate.
Yes.
We support the post office very, with 1,000 mailings for this one, and not 2,000 for the other one. We support the post office.
Talking to the people at our post office, they're telling me that this is gonna entail at least, they feel overall development will entail more employees, which they're already short on, as we all know.
We will have mailbox clusters, so there'll be kiosks where they can go and deliver banks of mail. So it expedites, not a house-to-house mail system. It's kind of their preference for where they are.
Make it easier for the people to break into.
I can't control those.
I know that, but just.
Yeah. We hope it's certainly the way that you do it today is to have the mailbox kiosks and bring that in. So centrally planned, that is something we actually look at and really work through and those routes. So yes, that is planned and not individual to individual. Although with delivery services anymore, that's kind of house to house anyway. So that's how a lot of that happens. Yes. Yeah, please.
Without a builder attached.
Yeah.
The concept art that's here, is it concept art or these are actual official plans that the builder has to pick up and then build?
Sure. That's a great question. So maybe just going through, so we talked about the architectural series, the design, is that a fully designed, like how does that happen if I'm a builder that comes along? Do I build this actual site plan or what's the process for going through that?
I think they'll have to work through any change, if they would change anything from what we would be proposing, we would have to work to amend it. So we would be guiding our architects or our builders to follow these guidelines as parameters, whether it's the stone changes slightly, we would have to work through any of those changes.
The one thing sorry, Brad. The one thing I'd reinforce about that, the architectural firm on this really is looking at a lot of different series and the styles and really what fits here. So they're certainly very knowledgeable about the builders in the market and what people want to see here that's different than say what we're having in some of the other neighborhoods. So that's certainly something that we're pretty attuned to. Could there be changes, right? Is there something that people could look at and then come through? If so, you'd have to come back through and do an amendment and go all the way through the same process to make those changes. Yeah.
Quick point of clarification, this all falls under that 0.50 special tax district, am I correct there? As well as being an HOA type community?
Yep.
Having those encumbrances?
Yeah, so to repeat the question, is this area A7, this neighborhood, part of the metro district, right? The special taxing district. It is part of the metro district boundaries. It's within Uplands. Also, and maybe I'd say to the team here, the different styles of homes here, right? We said where they don't have a builder attached. Is it likely that all of A7 is one HOA or would there be sub HOAs, or do we know that question yet? That answer, we know the question. Do we know that answer?
It's likely one.
So likely one. So that's probably very likely. This would be a series. When the builder comes on, this is very likely they would probably provide all of these. So then it'd be one HOA. So different HOA, but yes, subject to the metro district. Yeah, absolutely.
So there'd be like one HOA per builder, it's kind of the builder installed HOA and passes it out.
A lot of times it's that way. It could be, there's a lot of ways to approach that, right? But you look at the different amenities that come in, kind of the park, right, that serves this neighborhood. If you think about that publicly accessible private park, the maintenance that goes into that. So that's why that happens a lot where there's a sub HOA. I think of larger communities, Lowry, anything like that. A lot of those neighborhoods are done. The whole HOA applies to the neighborhood, right? And that's how we've managed those. So yes, that's very consistent with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I say things and it makes people ask a lot of questions. No problem.
Well, me, I already know question. I'm assuming this is going to be a family oriented neighborhood.
Yeah.
That being said, where will these children, be going to school or daycare?
Yeah. That's great. The question about where will these families, the families that likely are to move in here, where will the kids go to school? I'll just make a kind of overall comment and then we'll talk about the district this is in. When we went through school dedication or school fees is one of the parts that every development goes through in Westminster. And when we met with the school district for all of Uplands, they said, we do not want land dedication. We have a lot of extra school space. Our schools are not full. We're actually losing some enrollment. So we don't want a land dedication to build a new school. We'd rather have cash in lieu to invest back into our existing facilities. So that is a reflection, a long way of saying there is capacity. This is a school here, Crown Point Academy, the Westminster School District looking at that there is capacity. So the school district is one of our referral agencies. They look at every neighborhood and look at their capacity and how to approach that. So I'm sorry, I don't know the exact schools. I don't know if anybody knows that particularly for this neighborhood, but certainly going through that process. Yes.
Another question.
Sure.
That's where the food desert over here.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these people supposed to shop?
Yeah. Yeah. So the question about a food desert on this site or surrounding this site, right? One, I tell you, we actually completely concur, as always, that's an issue. We'd love to see more grocery service or food service here. The reason I'll tell you, and it's more of an editorial, there hasn't been a grocery here or a grocery that's been successful across the street is because there haven't been enough rooftops, right? This is a commuter area that people haven't lived by, and you want people to live there and walk across the street and go to the grocery store. So we are actively trying to pursue. We have long theorized that across Federal here, the Summit Square Center, that this should really see and lead to revitalization and investment, whether it be a grocer there or nearby or somewhere else. So we couldn't agree more. We want to see those services. And we think once we have those families and those individuals and professionals moving in, that we'll see grocery and food soon to follow. And we're very hopeful. Completely agree. Yeah, we've had a lot of leakage in Westminster about grocery stores and food service and restaurants and all of that. You're absolutely right. We have not been able to kind of turn that in. It's one thing we often theorize about we ask about traffic and the bus patterns. We really think traffic patterns are going to change substantially because we think they're actually shorter trips. People are driving a long way to go to grocery, to a restaurant and things like that. We're actually trying to create a full neighborhood that really will change those existing patterns and actually make it more of a complete neighborhood. Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Yes. We'll be conforming to all Westminster requirements. Water use is something we've been talking about for 10 years on this project, so it's been very pertinent. It's our low water use plant palette. We're going to continue with that same xeric palette throughout the community. PAA7 is no exception. We'll be seeing that apply here as well.
You know, what control systems will be on those guys as far as like.
Irrigation control.
Yeah, as far as like detecting how much, if there's recent rainfall, don't irrigate that.
What kind of sensory, what's our kind of equipment that we're using now to really kind of reinforce our xeric and sustainability on the outdoor watering systems?
I don't know the specific things we're doing, like from a product. I know we're pushing the envelope on anything we can, sustainability, water sensing. So if there is rainfall, there's a lot more technology than it used to be. So it knows when rainfall has happened in the area and it can turn off sprinklers. So we have central brain controls that are working to minimize redundant water use within drinking.
Sure.
Is there a detention area to capture the runoff?
Yeah.
Because of the change, and where is that, and where will that eventually end up?
So question repeating, the A7 neighborhood here, again, southeast corner, right? From where is this going? Where's the drainage generally happening on this site?
Is heading towards the large regional pond adjacent to the bowl.
But is there one actually on this?
No, the pond at Lowell has been, it accommodates all of the development in parcel A.
Then why is it, there's one up at, is it A2? There was a detention pond up there. You just contradicted yourself.
No, that's along Lowell. A2 is along Lowell. So that's part of that basin.
We can talk about that later, but that's a contradiction in statement.
There's one permanent detention facility or parcel A.
Then
As-
why is it shown on A2 and why has it been talked about on A2, having one there on that particular lot?
I don't know if we have an overall image, but go ahead and answer that. Yeah.
There are temporary sediment basins proposed during other grading operations.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's not what we've been told.
So the question is, so do we have permanent, are there the detention basins, where are they? And we're answering the question, the permanent basin is in what neighborhood?
It's in A3.
A3. Permanent is in A3. There are temporary structures, including in A2, that are along the site, generally along Lowell, as you well know. So on the west side of this site. But from this site, just thinking of Federal and obviously the grade of this site as you move from First to Irving, a little bit more kind of a level site. From Irving to Lowell, it's a fall of 50+ feet. And from this corner of 84th and Irving to 84th and Irving to 85th and Lowell is 65 feet fall across that there. So that tells you a little bit about how that is moving across there. So that's again why in A3, that's why our detention basin is in A3 neighborhood. That 65-foot fall that goes right off of this corner over to there. Great. Other comments? Yeah, please. Yeah. I think it's a really good question. It's raining here. Where are the inlets, like kind of generally in this neighborhood, and that's piped then below grade?
Yep, storm sewer is extended up to this neighborhood.
Excellent. Good. Other questions or comments? We're trying to get more people to Bellevue as well, right? So we're going to work on that. We owe everybody an answer on the turn on 84th. We'll follow up on that. It's certainly ours, but we want to be sure what the city may have said about that as well, right? So that's why we want to be sure on that. Again, the perimeter infrastructure is part of a separate application. We are only really talking about A7 as far as what moves forward from this application and this discussion. So I will say we had a slide projecting, we'll make another submittal. Maybe Kaylee just kind of summarize the next steps again on this application and then we'll close it out.
So our next step is to resubmit our official development plan, and the city will review that. Will go out on referral. Based upon feedback, we'll determine what the next steps need to be. If another submittal is required, we'll go through that. Or when staff and third-party reviewers agree that we're ready to go to planning commission and city council, we'll go back in front of them.
I'll just note, yeah, please, go ahead, please. Yeah.
2026?
Yeah. The question is just repeating is just across all of Uplands, when is the first neighborhood, when is the first resident that will actually move into the site? I've heard a couple of different answers on this, but you all maybe share kind of what your anticipation is. Again, the two neighborhoods that are approved right now, fully approved, right? So A2, which is on Lowell, generally between 86th and 87th. And then B1 neighborhood, those are approved today. What's the anticipation of the construction timeline? Yes. One of the owners said the other day, the fourth quarter of 2025. Yes, we said fourth quarter of 2025, we believe the first homes will be completed on Uplands. And then whether that's somebody moving in there the first quarter of 26, but we hope to have homes available the last quarter of next year, 2025.
There's a lot of variables in that are out of our.
Of course. Yeah, that goes through it. Okay. You all have been great. Thank you very much. If there are questions online, we'll follow up as well. Thanks very much for attending and thanks to the city as well.
Thanks, Steph.
Good night.
Thank you.
Now that we're up, can you go back to that?
Yeah.